So welcome back to my channel. I just dropped my daughter off at preschool, so I have about 3 hours to myself to kind of just do things that I can accomplish a lot easier with a lot less stress-inducing anxiety by myself than with a 3-year-old running around, which God love her, but I mean, it's so true. The cleaning up and finding out 10 minutes later that everything you just cleaned up is all over the floor again. It's just a nightmare sometimes. But I've been seeing a lot of these things around social media where it was like, get up, look presentable, put yourself together. If you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you want to do good. And I just have not been feeling the best about myself this summer. Now, granted, there has been a lot of things going on. If you're new to this channel, hello. My daughter was born, my second child was born in November of this past year, and she was born with a condition called micronathia, or another term for it is called Pierre-Robin syndrome. She was born without a jaw, or her jaw was just so small that like her airway was almost completely closed when she was born. It had a little bit of an opening, but if she would have, like, I was cut open with a cesarean. When they pulled her out, there were like 40, 50 doctors in the room. But when she started crying, they were afraid that her tongue would flap over the tiny airway that she had and suffocate herself. So she was, as soon as she was cut out of me, a breathing tube was put down her throat. And that's how she was for almost 2 months in the NICU. But anyways, that is just about all taken care of. We're still working with her. I still have therapy with her twice a week. And so it's just been a long summer of trying to make sure that my daughter, who I feel like is great, doing great, but I also want to make sure that I'm staying attentive to her needs because she was in the NICU for almost 3.5 months. So there are a lot of things that she didn't get to do as a 1-month-old, as a 2-month-old, as a 3-month-old, that traditional babies that don't have a 3.5 month stay in the NICU get to do. So my summer has just been a consistent going back to Ohio for therapy, coming back to our home here, going back to our place in Ohio for therapy, and coming back to our home here. That's literally like been my entire summer. And we decided that we wanted to start our oldest child, our 3-year-old, in preschool. So she's in preschool now. And that has been a challenge because we've been trying to get her acclimated to her new surroundings here, and we really wanted to get her in school. We would have tried to get her in school last year if the pregnancy had been more traditional pregnancy. It was not, with everything that we had going on with our second baby. So I have not been taking care of myself, but I've been just really trying to, I guess the word of the day is just like be delusional, because you have to really, I guess, even if you don't believe that you're good enough or you feel good enough about yourself, you have to keep putting yourself out there that you feel good enough until you actually do. So got my 40 ounces of water, and I just kind of want to just try and put myself together while I talk to you guys. So my fiance and I live like in the super, super, super rural Midwest. It's about 3.5 hours away from Ohio. And it is like, it's not the middle of nowhere. It's not. I joke all the time because it's completely like, not culture shock, but in terms of just the ways of living. And small town living, small town life, it has its pros for sure. And when I first started the series, Small Town Living, about a month and a half ago, I was just like really excited about it, and I couldn't wait, and there were so many good things that were happening, and Natalie seemed to be just really loving being out here and being, you know, in the middle of nature and being able to be outside, and you know, I wouldn't say no fear of like the outside surrounding worlds, because you always want to be, you know, with your head on a swivel and looking around, making sure, you know, there are safe people where you are. But it's certainly not the risk that you run in like the suburbs or the city, even. It's just not the same. And so I was just like really, I was loving it. I felt like Natalie was really loving it. I feel like our second baby, Adriana, was just in nature and in, you know, good sunlight and, you know, good, just, I just felt like it was just really good for, just to get back to the basics, you know? And these last like 4 or 5 weeks have just been like, I don't want to say a 180 because I still truly believe this is a wonderful place to raise your kids and a wonderful place to find a sense of freedom and find a sense of self where it's not so going. Time really does kind of slow down a little bit out here. But I have just been so alone and I have felt so alone, but my schedule doesn't seem like I would be so alone just because, you know, like I said, we're always going every week. We're driving back and forth and driving back and forth for some type of therapy, or we're in the countdown of our daughter's cleft palate surgery because as also being born without a jaw, she was also born with an open cleft palate. I'm sorry, her palate in the back of her throat didn't like close all the way. And so we are on the road. She will be having surgery to fix that in the middle of October, which that is coming up closer and closer by the day. I mean, it is the 22nd of freaking August already. I feel like August just started. Like, what the heck? Like these days are just like morphing into each other, in my opinion. And it's just, but going back to what I was saying, I have just truly felt like so alone because one of the, I guess, pros of a small town is like everybody knows everybody. But like everybody knows everybody from like when their parents were kids and like then their parents grew up and then their parents got married and then their parents had kids and then those kids went to school and then they now have gotten married and have kids. And so it's just like, even though my fiance knows just about everybody, they don't know me. And all the girls especially are all super tight with each other. You know, they have generations of bonds because that's what happens in a small town. Your families are bonded with other families in the small town. And here comes this like chick who's just very obviously not from around here. And I know it's just like put yourself out there, but it's really, really difficult when you have kids to make friends, not just for your kids, but for you, just to make friends for you. And I have my best friends. My best friends all know who they are. I have them in Ohio, but you know, we are transitioning to only being in Ohio for, you know, surgeries and things like that. And so it's, you know, my fiance's like, you need to make friends. You need to make friends. And it's just like, I understand that I would like to make friends. I truly get that. But first of all, I'm overly cautious about who I have in my life because it's not just about me. Who I have in my life extends to my children's life. And you just don't really know about people. You don't know where people's values are. You don't know how people have been raised. Well, I do know how these people have been raised out here. You know, I love it. Church-going people and community-driven people and people who seem to really want the best for you. And, you know, because at the end of the day, the small community thrives when everybody thrives, right? So, but still, you know, you just never know who you have in who you have around you, how they're gonna affect, influence, have some type of effect on your kids. You just never know. And so you just, especially in today's day and world, you're just extra cautious. And it's just, he doesn't get that. He thinks it's just like, you just, you know, need to just show up and make friends. And then, like I said, with me going back and forth to Ohio every week, it's very difficult to find somebody on that same schedule. And, you know, a lot of his friends that he went to school with, a lot of them had kids in their late 20s, early 30s. He and I didn't have our first child until he was 38. So a lot of our baby stage that's happening right now, his friends have already gone through that, and their kids are like first graders, second graders, third graders. So that's another thing. It's like, where I'm able to take my kids that I feel like is appropriate for an 8-month-old and a 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old, is not necessarily going to be, you know, as stimulating or maybe even as appropriate as a 7 or 8-year-old. So I have like all of these things to consider, and it has just been like exceedingly lonely. Like I remember over 4th of July, like I got on Facebook and I saw all of these like scrolls of just like photos being posted of like people with their friends and people, you know, that I used to work with their babies, and like everybody hanging out. And it just, I missed it. I missed it. And don't get me wrong, like we had family here, we had his family here, and his mother is an absolute dream. I absolutely love my fiance's mother. You want to talk about like award-winning mother-in-law? My goodness, like award-winning mother-in-law. And I could not be more blessed. I could not be more blessed that she is the woman that my children got blessed with for a grandmother. It's probably been the best thing that has come out of our move here, because she's so involved with the kids, and she was so involved, especially before we had Adriana, with Natalie and getting Natalie and prepared for school and learning different things, and so attentive and so consistent. And she did used to, her my fiance's mother's mother was a school teacher, and so like she really did, my fiance's mother really did learn from the best, and it clearly shows. I think my daughter is extremely bright, and then you add on top of that the consistent attention of going over things and being taught things at an earlier age than maybe other people would do it. I mean, she's just been a godsend. And on top of that, while our second baby was in the NICU for 3.5 months, she watched our first child for the entire 3.5 months. She watched our first child. And so I am indebted to her in ways I'll never be able to show gratitude for. In my opinion, there will never be enough ways for me to show gratitude for her because of what she did for us. But so I've just been really lonely. But going back to what I was saying about the 4th of July, I was around family and I was around his family, but I was online and I was scrolling and I was seeing all these people that I used to know and I used to work with that had babies that were all hanging out. And I just missed it. I did, and I just felt like, am I here where I'm supposed to be? And then we went to church. We went to church that following week, and we were talking about one of the things that we were, one of the books I bought for church were Mothers and Sisters of the Bible. I can't believe I don't have it right now, but it's a pink paperback book. It stands about yay tall, and it just really, all the stories involved talk about the different women of the Bible that led eventually to Jesus and Mary, and you know how all of it's connected. And one of the stories we talked about was Ruth and Naomi. Now, Ruth was married to one of Naomi's sons, and Naomi had 2 sons and a husband, and both of her sons got married. Unfortunately, both of her sons passed along with her husband, and Naomi told Ruth, I'm sorry that your husband has passed. Why don't you go back to your family? Because, I'm just your mother-in-law, and, you came out here to be with your husband, and your husband is no longer with us. Your husband has passed on. So, like, why don't you go back to be with your family, like your biological family? And Ruth said no. Ruth was like, wherever you go, I go. Ruth told Naomi, you are now my family. And Ruth committed to that and stayed to that, and told Naomi, like, this is us. We're in this together. We're gonna be like this. I married your son. He has passed. Your husband has passed, and I'm ready to ride this out with you until one of us is no longer here. And I think about that story a lot, and it really struck a chord with me. I almost started crying in church. I think I turned to my fiance's mother, and I just told her, like, I said, I am resonating with this story so much because I left my best friend, I left my sister, who's another one of my best friends, and I left my other best friend. And, my sister, she has 3 babies. One of them unfortunately passed in the past year. And so, like, she's been grieving through this whole year, along with carrying another child that she brought into this world, which she's healthy, by the way. And she's healing. But I feel like I left who I consider my family, to come out here and be with my fiance and his family. And my fiance hasn't passed or anything like that, but I just think about the sacrifice that, like, Ruth just committed herself to. She loved Naomi, and she loved Naomi enough that even after Naomi's son, Ruth's husband, had passed, she was just like, I'm still gonna stay here with you. Like I said, we're gonna ride it out. I'm not going back home. You are my home. And so I think about that, and I think about, I miss my friends. I miss my best friends. And like, when I say that, I'm saying, like, I don't really hang out with people. Like, there's X amount of people that I hang out with, and, like, it's like 3 or 4. Like, legit 3 or 4 people. That's it. And I'm a very private person in terms of just who I have my kids around. Like I've already stressed earlier. I'm just very, very particular. And as I've grown up through the last couple years of my 20s, it's just become more obvious to just keep that circle really, really tight and small. And that's what I've done. And so I never would have imagined leaving that circle to come out here. But when I think of how wonderful, how much of a godsend of a person Naomi must have been for Ruth to give up going back to her biological family to stay with Naomi, I'm just like, this story was meant for me. And I'm not in any way trying to tell myself that I'm Ruth, or I'm anywhere near as sanctified as Ruth or anything like that, because I'm not. But I think that story found me for a reason. I think it found me when I needed it, when I needed just, like, reassurance that, like, you can't see the road in front of you. You can't see where it's taking you, but just know you are where you're supposed to be. And I'm just leaning on so much faith right now, because it has been very difficult to be out here. I literally don't really see any other adults except for his mother. His brother's girlfriend lives down the road, but she also works her butt off. I think she works like over 60 hours a week. Now, they don't have any kids, so she has the ability to do that. But it just leaves me again, I'm in the constant day-to-day of 2 kids under 2, and my fiance's at work 9, 10, 11 hours a day. And so it's just been really lonely, because I know if I were in Ohio, I would have my circle of group, my tight circle that I would be around, and I wouldn't be lonely, you know? So I lean on that story a lot, and I think it found me for a reason, because my fiance's mother she is Naomi. She really is. She sacrificed everything to take care of our children. I'm sorry, our child, when our other child was in the NICU. And she did that like it was like, well, of course, that's what family does. Like, she was like, I wouldn't have expected her to be with anybody else. And it's just like the fact that like you didn't even feel like you felt like that was your job. Like you just felt like stepping up and taking care of our daughter. When I couldn't be there, you just knew that was your job. You said, absolutely. Like, who else would it have been? And like, truly, it's just, so I do find my mother-in-law to be a Naomi, and I just really I love my fiance, and he's a great man, and he's a great provider. But I absolutely value who his mother is and what she has meant to me, being out here for me. So it's just, that's my story for today. You know, I'm working on myself. I'm trying to continue to be present, because I see this all the time too on social media. It's like you look up, and that house that you were worried about keeping clean, and those dishes you were worried about, you know, keeping out of the sink, and those toys you were worried about not being picked up, all that eventually is going to go away. And you're going to be stuck just wishing you had one more day. Just one more day to just fight with little kids about putting their toys up. And you can't, because they're old enough to not want to hang out with you anymore. They don't want to hang out with you anymore. So I am trying my best to be present, but I truly believe that like being present also means like showing up for yourself. And I have not been doing that like at all. I just haven't been doing that. And like I said, I've been really embarrassed about how I've looked in the last like couple months, and you have to show up for yourself. And your kids are only going to learn by the examples you set, good and bad. So if you show up for yourself, they will learn to do that. If you don't, they will also learn to do that. So you just have to remember, people are watching you. Little tiny humans are watching you. My makeup is not done, but this video has gone on long enough, so I'll see you guys later.